we go right to Jeremy Reisman. I'm absolutely rattled right now. And Jeremy Reisman's waiting, and we're going to get to talk to him because he was at training camp today. Covers the Detroit Lions for Pride of Detroit. Let's get his thoughts on this matter. Also, he's a Hornet survivor. You know, he's coming off
that
vicious attack, and he's joining the program. So let's bring him in, Mr. Jeremy Reisman. Jeremy, how are we doing?
Thanks for the PTSD there. Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I would be remiss. I had to at least mention it, Jeremy. You know, the guy's a soldier. You know, he's playing, disc golf? He's out there throwing it. What is going on? How'd this happen? How'd the Hornets nest get found?
Listen, I'm not a good disc golf player, and so I hit a tree about 10 feet in front of me. Disc bounced way into the right, into the woods there, and I assume I step on a wasp's nest or something because suddenly I get a little prick on my leg, then a second, then a third, and then a fourth, and then I finally realize what's happening. I'm getting stung by a swarm of wasps. I run away, and I've never been stung by a bee before, so I don't know how this works. So I just run 10 feet away, not realizing that the wasps are going to follow you pretty much as far as you want. So then I'm getting stung in the back, in the arms, in the neck. So then I realized, okay, I need to get as far away as possible. And I walked away with probably about 10 stings in total. And that was an experience.
Yeah, I can just
That's
feel
insane.
It's like Forrest Gump. Just never stop running, Jeremy. He's just running forever, just away from the wasp. Well, appreciate you for joining. I know you were out there today. You were out there the last 2 days and most days of training camp, every day of training camp. But the last 2 days with the Dolphins, it seems like, and we could just start here, the offense. I know you were there to watch Amon-Ra St. Brown yesterday and put up 500 million yards. But what has been your kind of thoughts on this offense? Because it seems like early on the offensive line's been gelling, and then it seems like just like when you see a really good offense in the NFL struggle, you're like, eventually they're going to click. It seems like they were just waiting, and then the Dolphins just got the unfortunate end of it, where it's like they finally are clicking and they're scoring on pretty much every drive. But what have you made of this offense and how they've looked the last 2 days against the Dolphins?
Yeah, it's really telling, and it almost feels more telling of the Lions' defense than anything else. It's just like, okay, once they stop going up against DJ Reed and Brian Branch and Aiden Hutchinson, everything starts clicking. Oh, okay, that makes sense. You're going against a Dolphins defense that isn't particularly that good. They lost a lot of big players this offseason. Their defensive front is kind of okay, but their secondary is kind of in shambles. And so I think it made I feel like it almost told me more about the defense than the offense to see the offense finally break through. And I want to give some credit to the offense too. I think any sort of panic or concern or whatever was probably a little ill-conceived at the time, because they still have the crazy personnel that they do on the offensive side of the ball. But it's really the offensive line stuff that definitely feels like it's all coming together, whether it's Tate Ratledge continuing to grow at right guard, whether it's getting Taylor Decker back at left tackle, or just having all five of your starters finally out there and gelling together. Saw a lot of big runs today, a lot of good goal line play, both kind of getting out of their own zone and, literally, red zone goal line type of stuff. So I think everything just looked a little bit more familiar and looks a lot more of what we're accustomed to from this offense. And I think that's both a product of not having to face the defense anymore and the offensive line just kind of finally getting it together here.
I've interrupted the video to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Comer & Cross, and their one-day installation for concrete floor coatings, garages, basements, patios. They do it all. And I'm sure you're tired of staring at your crack-stained garage floor. Well, I have the answer for you. Comer & Cross in their summer installation sale, they're offering 12 months same as cash or $500 in savings. Why put it off? You can contact the number, 248-834-3488. They transform patios, pool decks, basements, even driveways. They do it all. And the best part is they move the stuff out for you. They repair your cracks and pits before applying your stunning new floor, guaranteed. Comer & Cross concrete floors never chip, crack, or peel like epoxy or paint. Again, you could call the number, 248-834-3488, or you can book your free estimate at comercross.com. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah, Jeremy, just going off the offensive line there, I know everyone's talking about J-Mo and Amon-Ra and David Montgomery and Jameer and the weapons on this offense. I've thought this whole offseason, this whole offense is going to whatever this O-line does, that's like the bread and butter of what they've built in the pillar of this offense. How have you felt over the last week, especially the last few days versus the Dolphins? One, with Tate Ratledge kind of being at right guard and Christian Mahogany at left guard, and then also Graham at center, kind of the new revamped O-line. Are you feeling a little bit more optimistic going into this season after the last week?
Yeah, no question. I think you're right. To have the offensive line as your primary concern, because we know who Amon-Ra is, we know who JMO is at this point, even too. We know all the other weapons that they have. We know, Jahmyr Gibbs could be in for an even bigger season. But the offensive line was always the question. And honestly, for the past, I would say like week and a half, Tate Ratledge has shown me a lot of high end stuff that I didn't really expect to see right away from him. Like I'm talking your guys getting making like this last second stunt and you're recognizing it just enough time to go out there and clean him out, give Jared Goff a little bit of a lane, or the like indirect nonverbal communication stuff with Penei. And I fully understand that working right next to Penei Sewell will make a lot of things a lot easier in your life. And Tate Ratledge said exactly that after practice today. Like, listen, he's going to make my life easier all season long, but there's still like the kind of, and he's mentioned this too, like the nonverbal communication between the two that's already seemingly that is developed. I would say Graham Glasgow's probably been one of the steadiest players from start to finish ever since they kind of moved him over to center. It seems like something he's particularly comfortable in. He's winning a lot of his one-on-ones, which is something that I think maybe was a bigger concern because he kind of has the mental aspect of it, but he's in his 30s. He's a guy that, has not seen a lot of success at left guard. And I think people thought maybe he lost a step, but he has been very, very consistent. And, when the Lions are out there, he's going up against DJ Reader. He's going up against Tyleik Williams, a guy almost 10 years younger than him. So I've been really impressed with him. And then Mahogany too. Like he's such a road grader in the run game where it just feels like that's where he's happiest and that's where he's the most comfortable. And there's still things that I think he needs to work out with communication because he's been with basically every reserve tackle to his left on the team at some point, whether it's Jamarco Jones, Giovanni Manu, Dan Skipper. He's only had, 2 or 3 days of practices with Taylor Decker in the lineup. So that's something that I think still needs room to grow. But I have all the confidence in the world that he has the physical makeup to be a really good left guard as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, the big storyline of training camp, Isaac Tesla, he's Mayotron, whatever you want to say. There's like 40 nicknames for the guy. He's been impressing, and I'll even speak from just my evaluation coming out. I don't know how you felt about him coming out, but it was like maybe he's a player that in year 2 can make a bigger impact. Seems like year 1, he's just already ready to go. Physically, mentally, the hands are there. And now with Tim Patrick being out, it makes things very interesting. Not that I think Tim Patrick, and I told Booner this, my opinion, I think the Lions, knowing how they usually do things, is they like to ease guys along, even though Isaac's, it looks like he's ready, but Dan's still like, all right, let's give this thing some time. But it looks like he could compete for that wide receiver 3 spot right away. That true kind of exit guy on the outside. But what have you made of the training camp he's had so far? And what has been your kind of projection for him this season? How early he can make an impact for the Lions?
Yeah, I would say my initial impressions were the same as you, where I was like, okay, like I get the vision of this guy long-term. He hasn't played a lot on the outside. He hasn't seen a lot of press coverage in his days. He's still going to have to kind of learn the route tree all over again, playing on the outside than rather in the slot. It requires so much different nuance to your game there that, year 2 seems like with the part where you circle. Like I almost view it as Sione Vaki's first season here. Obviously, there isn't as much room for Sione Vaki to grow because they have 2 really good running backs, and the Lions have some maybe openings at wide receiver coming for Tesla. But it was like, maybe he'll get some packages toward the end of the year, and then year 2 we'll see. Maybe he takes over as the wide receiver X. That plan has certainly shifted, in my opinion. He's a guy that just seemingly makes at least one big play every single day in training camp. And it's not like 100% consistent. He's not like winning all of his one-on-ones. I'd say he probably wins about half of them, which is not all that bad. But the other thing to note too, is that he's still not repping with the ones all that often. It's been almost exclusively to Khalif Raymond. And we even saw, a little bit of Ronnie Bell with the ones on Wednesday. We haven't seen a ton of Tesla there. And that speaks to what you said as well, where they're going to take this guy along slowly. They still think this guy has a lot of room to grow. I imagine he's going to continue to get a lot of play in the preseason games, which I think might unnerve some people because they want to keep him all safe and in bubble wrap and all that sort of stuff. But they still see a guy that has a lot of room to grow, that still has a lot of seasoning that needs to be had. And I do think, though, that he's done enough where he's going to start getting sprinkled into the offense pretty early. I would say I'd be surprised if he didn't have a few sub packages, like even in September. They like Tim Patrick. They trust Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick's been sidelined for a week or so with an injury, but I think the job is still his in week 1. But I think Slaw has proven that he is a top 5, top 6 weapon on this team, maybe already. And I know that doesn't sound like, oh, wow, top 6. Like, that's way down in the order. I mean, with all the weapons that this team has, top 5, top 6 is nothing to shake your fist at. I think he gets some play pretty early this season.
And Jeremy, something me and Boone talk about is, do you think they keep? I think that there's a chance they keep 6 wide receivers. Yeah. Booner thinks they keep. Booner said last year they kept less, and he thinks it's like Dominic Lovett could be the one that ends up getting cut.
I said 5 this year.
5. What side of the fence are you on there?
I'm at 6, and I know there are even some beat writers that are considering 7 because of some of the things that Jackson Meeks is doing, and I think the common belief right now is that Dominic Lovett is that wide receiver 6 position, but obviously we have to kind of see how that plays out. He missed a good portion of practice. Thankfully, he returned today, and that makes me believe he might get some time in the preseason game upcoming. He still has a lot to prove. Meeks still has a lot to prove, but I think 6 is a pretty comfortable number just with the amount of depth that they have at that position. I think you want to keep at least one of Jackson Meeks or Dominic Lovett, and because I think, it's always really hard to predict which guys get plucked off the waivers. I think your draft pick would probably have a little bit more of a chance, but the Lions aren't in a spot where they can't afford a wide receiver 6. There are some other positions where I'm like, I kind of want a 10th offensive lineman or a 9th or 10th defensive back. Or what about Nate Lynn? What about, Keith Cooper, like all these other guys. But I think the depth there is just so good. And, when you consider that you might not have Khalif Raymond after this year, you might not have Tim Patrick after this year, you want to get younger at that position. That's something that Brad Holmes said this offseason. So I'm not sure they're going to risk losing one or maybe even both of those guys.
Yeah, I just want to ask about another weapon, the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery thing. A lot of people, Jeremy, are obviously saying, hey, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be even better this year, which I don't disagree with. I think Jahmyr is just going to keep getting better. But I think a lot of people are thinking that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get even more of a carry load. I saw David Montgomery. You've been there almost every day. We've been there about 4 or 5 days. I've been saying this on Twitter, Jeremy. To me, it looks like David Montgomery's in the best shape of his life. It looks like he is. I'm not going to say he looks smaller because he's still massive for a running back and will bully people, but he looks slimmer. He looks quicker. He looks faster. It really does look like he's in the best shape of his life. And I don't see the way he looks at practice right now, how you're not like, hey, David Montgomery's about to have one of his best seasons. At the same time, people are like, hey, Jahmyr's going to have his best season. How do you see this? Are they just going to keep the same balance so they can preserve these guys for the playoffs? How do you see this thing playing out with those two?
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely going to continue to operate in a running back by committee way. And I think our mutual friend here, Justin Rogers, kind of put it best in a conversation I had with him, where it was just like, it does feel like this offseason, Jahmyr Gibbs officially went from 1B to 1A, but it still is a 1A, 1B situation. It's just now Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of that primary, is the guy that you might see starting football games where it was mostly David Montgomery last year. That, we're talking about a switch from, like it was still about like 60-40 in Jahmyr Gibbs' favor. Now it's like 65-35. Like it's still going to be a pretty clean split between the two, but I'm with you. Like, David Montgomery is one of those dudes that just shines, I think, in joint practices because he wants to be more physical than anyone else on that field. And so the Lions got a lot of short yardage work today, and I thought he was fantastic. I thought Sione Vaki was actually kind of surprisingly fantastic in the physicalness of his game as well. But with, Montgomery, that is a guy that they value so much that they aren't going to make it like, okay, Jahmyr's going to get 30 touches and we're just going to give 5 to Dave Montgomery. That's not how this team is built. That's not playing into your best. If you want to talk about your 5-6 best weapons, David Montgomery is on that list too. So they're not going to ignore him. They're not going to just make this a, situation where you have a Saquon Barkley and everyone else. Like, no, David Montgomery is part of that offense. He's essentially, I would say, in some ways, the heart of the offense too.
Yeah, the Hutch rule thing is interesting. He's been absolutely dominant. I don't know if he's got a robotic leg or something, Jeremy. He's out there doing special things. And today, and yesterday he just can't be blocked. What have you made on just how good or great he's looked, and I guess the season that we should be expecting out of this guy? Because I think Defensive Player of the Year coming off a broken leg is it's almost like I know he's like one of the favorites on most betting apps, but it feels like it's just destiny. This guy's going to come off a traumatic injury and just rattle off comeback player of the year and defensive player of the year. But what have you made how dominant he's been so far in training camp?
Yeah, there was a day, like it was either the first or second day of padded practice where he went on a tear on whoever the left tackle was at that moment. It was obviously not Taylor Decker, but it was like the moment everyone had decided Aiden Hutchinson had arrived. There's no concern about him. Don't worry about him. And he hasn't slowed down since. And you hear the way some coaches, some players talk about the guy, and he's so relentless in his learning of the game and his pursuit to get better that it almost makes you feel like an idiot if you ever thought during the draft process that he was already near his ceiling, his developmental ceiling, which is something that was commonly said by a lot of people. And I probably bought into it. I'm just like, well, yeah, I can see, he's got a limited athletic body. So maybe, but no, like this guy is just going to work until he hits that limit. And you realize how much of hitting your limit isn't about what you can physically do. It's where mentally you can get yourself. And that's where Aiden Hutchinson separates himself from almost everybody else in the league. I do kind of have a running joke on our show that he's a little bit of a backup tackle merchant, very much tongue in cheek, like all these slot merchant stuff that Amon-Ra gets, because if you do remember, his ridiculous pace last year was certainly at least aided by the fact that he went every single game, I think, except for one against the backup tackle. And then it's just kind of funny. You get into training camp and now he's beating up on Dan Skipper. It's like, okay, he's doing it again. And, the Dolphins were missing the right tackle. And you're like, is this just what kind of crazy luck does he have in his favor? But that's all tongue in cheek. Like, he is a very, very talented player. I don't know if he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but it does kind of feel like he's a shoo-in for Comeback Player of the Year already, just because I have literally zero concerns about Aiden Hutchinson going into the season. It seems like, that injury happened early enough in last season where he essentially got a full off season, and you're starting to see it here in training camp.
Hey, Jeremy, I know today you were watching the offense, but the defense over the last few days as well. One of the most interesting storylines to me is obviously the Anzo stuff that happened away from, obviously, we don't know if it was hold in during OTAs, all of that. But Jack Campbell gets the green dot, and it's been his defense, Dan said. How has Jack kind of taken over the last week or so, control of that defense, and how does he look in his development going into this year, especially in coverage? Have you seen him at all in coverage the last week or so?
A little bit, for sure. And I would say the first day of training camp, there were some positive things, particularly when he's lined up against a tight end. I still think this team has a little bit of trouble against the speedy running backs, but my only evidence is two of the best speedy receiving running backs in football, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane. Not easy assignments for him or Anzalone. So that's something that's still developing. And in a lot of ways, it's just never going to develop because those guys are just so much more athletic than linebackers. It's a mismatch for a reason. If you're game planning against Devon Achane, like maybe you decide to put Brian Branch on him instead of a linebacker. But yeah, I think in general, if you want to talk about Jack Campbell's game, the best way I would describe it is it just looks steady. He looks so comfortable. Everything seems like it's coming second nature. So he's reacting a little bit quicker. He's getting to the ball carrier a little bit quicker. He's getting the team in the right looks quicker. He's barking out signs and moving defensive linemen and dropping into coverage. All that just in like a half a second quicker than he was last year. Now, I know a lot of people are like, okay, this is the year he takes an all-pro step. This is the year he really breaks out. The thing that I think will get in the way of that a little bit is, in order to do that, you really have to have the disruption numbers. You need interceptions. You need forced fumbles. You need sacks. He's a little bit capable of doing all those things, but also we haven't really seen it. We haven't seen interceptions in camp. We see some pass rushing with him and Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone. They're going to be aggressive at that linebacking level. And I think maybe that's kind of the untapped potential, but those disruption numbers are just really, really hard to come by in this defense. And so I don't know if he'll get the national praise that he probably deserves, but I think he's just going to be a guy that's like 150 tackles, probably, a dozen for loss, really good stats. And I think he's just going to be a very, very good player. It just might not resonate nationally in a way that I think some people are predicting.
How do we get this guy in the national news, Jeremy? Because I'm saying I said earlier in the month, I said this guy's going to end up being, he should be talked about as one of the best linebackers in the game after this season. And I actually mentioned that to Jeff. I was like, a lot of these guys just nationally, people just love them. There's something about Jack where just no one wants to talk about him. I don't know if it's because Anzo's always been in front of it. I don't know what it is. We need to find a way to get this guy out there. Maybe we sell some merch or something.
It's hard to sell merch. It's a redneck from Iowa. You know, it's a tough sell.
All right. Maybe we make some corn merch or something. I don't know. We'll figure this out.
He needs to grow out the hair or like start swinging a hammer or have like a cool nickname like Jack. Like I love Jack, but he's a little bit of white bread attitude. Like it's not the most exciting guy to talk to.
Yeah, that's fair, Jeremy. We appreciate you. You guys can check out Jeremy, of course, at Detroit Online, Proud of Detroit. Jeremy, we'll talk to you soon, my friend. Appreciate you as always.
No, sounds good, Piles.
There you go.
Appreciate it, Jeremy.
Jeremy Reisman joining the program. Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, FisherCTSports.com.